In the ruins of an ancient temple, Lyra senses a powerful presence. As she calls upon the moon goddess Luna, she makes a wish that comes with an enigmatic and possibly perilous promise. What did she wish for? And what does the goddess's response foretell? Don't blink, the plot twist ahead will blow your mind. Subscribe to us and don't miss a beat. 1. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped into the ruins of the old temple, all my senses alert. The sun was starting to set on the horizon, and it was getting darker gradually. As far as my ears and nose could tell, there wasn't a single soul in this part of the woods. There couldn't be a more perfect time than this. I carefully walked through the ruins, watching my steps in the debris. I continued until I reached the center of the ruins, where the two pillars stood tall and proud. Even though most of the structure of the ancient temple had collapsed and withered away due to time and weather, the twin pillars remained standing. Had I come at dawn, I could have seen the sun rising through them in the east. That would have been beautiful to watch, but I saved that for another day. The carvings on the pillars were clearer than ever, regardless of all the damage the rest of the structure had suffered. This always made me wonder about the materials used to erect the pillars. But tonight my interests were somewhere else. I was here for something more important and I needed to focus on that. I stood between the two pillars, facing the vast snowtop mountains. I closed my eyes and took several more breaths to calm my body down and focus on my surroundings until I felt myself becoming one with the woods. I felt everything at that moment: the turn of the breeze, the rustle of the leaves, the gentle way they landed on the forest floor, and how the small animals moved around. I stood there until I felt like an extension of the woods. It all felt so right in the moment. This was it. I started chanting the spells gently, lifting my hands and feeling the night breeze playing with my hair. I couldn't help but smile at that. Felt so good. I was starting to love it all too much until the breeze stopped flowing abruptly. The woods around me fell silent, or everything froze. I couldn't decide. Everything had been put on pause, and the reason for that was an all-powerful presence that I felt behind me. I wanted to turn around and see it, but I couldn't bring myself. A shiver ran down my spine when I felt the presence approaching me. I swallowed hard. "Is that you, Luna?" I whispered, on the verge of shaking. "Why did you summon me, my child?" asked a voice. It was the sweetest and most soothing voice I had ever heard. It instantly put me at ease, but still I didn't find the courage to turn around and see her. Is this real? You are real?" I asked, unable to believe my ears that I was talking to a goddess. "I'm as real as everything around us, and tell me, why did you summon me?" she urged, stopping behind me where I could feel her power surging through me with such intensity that it made me feel weak in my knees. "Luna." I licked my lips, feeling anxious all of a sudden. I should have thought about this more, but fuck it. I was here and the goddess was waiting for me. I didn't feel like wasting her time. I needed to be upfront with her about what I wanted. Otherwise, I was never going to get it. After all, I knew well from childhood that closed mouths never got fed. "I'm looking for a mate," I told her up front, and received a gentle, amused laugh from her. I could guess I heard the smile in her voice. "I'm done dating and waiting for my mate to come around. Most wolves find their mates before their 20th birthday. Don't you think it's a bit too late for me?" I asked her. 9 years late, to be precise, she agreed with a gentle smile. "Exactly." I sighed. "I'm just tired of waiting. It's hard, especially when I see everyone around me paired up," I whispered, blinking, tears stinging my eyes. I didn't want to think about my last boyfriend, Jason. He was like me, too mateless, and I thought I would have him with me for a while until last year when I saw him find his mate. In that moment, everything changed. He dumped me in the blink of an eye and disappeared with his new mate, leaving me alone again. I had tried my best to move on from that, but it had done the damage. After all, it wasn't the first time that had happened. I had another boyfriend before Jason. He was way older, but he was mateless. I thought he'd be great for me, but he went out without me one night and found his mate. Just like that, and dumped me over a fucking text. It hurt bad then, but I was younger and thought I'd learn to live with it, and then I met Jason. I should have thought it through. I should have been careful and known better, but no. It shattered me when I got dumped for the second time, especially after dating Jason for almost 6 years. And now, here I was mateless, clueless, and on the verge of becoming lifeless. Since Jason dumped me last year, I decided to be celibate and wait for my mate, but it got too hard. Too fucking lonely. I'm the only mateless person I know. And this time I didn't have it in me to pull myself back again and find someone else, only to be dumped for the third time so fucking brutally. If I get dumped the third time, then I'll lose it. So I ended up paying a witch heavily for a spell to summon the moon goddess, and now here I was asking her for my mate. I know what you mean, my child, but everyone has their time, she assured me. When will mine come? I asked her, impatient. I didn't care how I sounded at that moment. I was desperate for a mate, just someone to cling to in this empty life of mine. I had no family and no friends, only some associates that I worked with once in a while. It didn't help that my work was somewhat solitary. I was done with this. I needed someone, or else I was going to lose myself. Soon, the moon goddess assured me. How soon? I pressed. You'll find that out, she spoke. I didn't miss how she sounded uncertain about that herself. This almost made me turn around and look at her. Have you not found anyone for me yet? I asked her. Is there anything particular you're looking for? She asked me after a pause. That uncertain tone remained in her voice. I tilted my head to the side, thinking. Actually, yes, I breathed, feeling excited. Then tell me, my child. What do you wish to have in your mate? I have made you wait long. I owe this to you, she urged, something dark in her voice. I licked my lips excitedly, ready with a long list. But I wish I had given it some more thought. There's a reason why they say to be careful what you wish for. To Lyra. I would like someone kind and nurturing, I started. Kind and nurturing, the moon goddess noted. But at the same time aggressive and ruthless, I imagined. It was contrasting, but oh, it lit up a fire inside me. I hadn't thought about this properly before. This was the first time I was thinking about my likes and dislikes in a person. Otherwise, I generally dated whoever I found mateless, and that was a minuscule population that was constantly dwindling, so I didn't really ever have a choice. I went with whatever I got, and that always ended up in me being dumped and feeling hurt. Aggressive, the moon goddess muttered, a strange inflection in her voice. I didn't pay much attention to that and continued. I want someone who will treat me like I am the most fragile thing on this earth, but at the same time, I want them to be rough and overly possessive with me. I want someone who would let me be myself, but at the same time, call me out on my shit and set me straight whenever I cross any line. I want someone who praises but punishes me, too. I want someone who burns for me but at the same time cannot live without me. I want someone who craves me so much that it'll hurt them to live without me for even one day. I want someone who sees my best and worst, and yet accepts me with an open heart. I want someone who makes my heart flutter and pussy ache every time I look at them. I want someone who supports me no matter what. I want someone who will follow me to hell if that's the place I wish to go. I want someone who's so obsessed with me that their only goal in life is to please me, pleasure me, and make me quiver with need every time they touch and look at me because my need for them is their only source of sustenance. I want someone who makes me laugh every day and makes me cry with pleasure every night for the rest of my life. I want someone who is generous and giving, but they are greedy when it's their turn to derive pleasure. I want someone who worships me like their life depends on my blessings, but at the same time ravages me like they own every part of me. I want someone who loves me so much that I feel so full every fucking time. I was still surprised to feel the presence of the goddess behind me when I was done speaking. I thought she might have left in the middle because no one had any time for a crying Camilla like me, but she was there listening, and it gave me some sort of comfort. It'd be okay if I didn't end up getting what I wanted, but for once I was glad that I was able to get the all off my chest instead of just burying it down and only wishing. At least now, I knew that I had asked even if I didn't end up with it. That's quite a lot, the moon goddess commented, a hint of something unreadable in her voice. I tilted my head to the side to listen more closely to her. But I hear you. Thanks for listening, I sighed deeply. I will see what I can do, she told me, her voice hardened all of a sudden. But I have a condition. I froze. Condition? Of course. What did I expect? That I could just summon a goddess and ask her for a mate, and that will happen all like that. No. Everything came at a price. What condition? I asked. It's simple but might not be easy for you. She trailed off, her voice somewhat unfocused. Whatever I must give you, you shall accept without a question. I found her words strange. Everyone accepted their mates. I had hardly heard of rejections. They happened, but they were quite rare, and for a moment this made me wonder if I would end up being one of those unfortunate select few who end up getting rejected. Suddenly my heart ached. No, I wouldn't be able to take that. Every relationship I've ever had so far has always ended bitterly for me. Whether it be friends, family, or my couple of boyfriends, everyone always left me. What was the guarantee that my mate wouldn't? The idea scared me. Why cannot I just catch a break for once? What did I do to deserve such pain and loneliness? I will accept my mate, I told her sternly, earning a mocking laugh from her. At that moment I wondered if I was doing the right thing by asking her to pair me. I didn't miss the cruel tone in her laugh. Was this her way of giving me new sources of pain in my life? You must keep your word, she stated darkly, taking a step closer to me. A chill ran down my spine. The energies oozing out of her subdued my senses and threatened to overpower me. I felt so weak at that moment that without realizing it, I dropped to my knees. I breathed, feeling lightheaded. In response, she laughed that mocking laugh out loud until the voice echoed throughout the woods. The night air suddenly turned so chilly that it made me shiver. Black dots were starting to appear in my vision, while the rest of my body started to feel weaker. I collapsed on the floor. My head hitting the ground and pain seared through my head. My body seemed to be growing colder with every passing second. But at the same time it felt like I was burning. I had never experienced something like this before. As my consciousness continued to fade away, I felt the presence of the goddess lingering around me. Sleep, my child, I heard her whisper as I swam in darkness. Get all the sleep you can before they find you. They. Who was she talking about? What did she mean by that? I wish I could ask her that, but it was too late already. 3. Marius. I glared at the screen, reading the email from my cybersecurity team. The same thing happened again. Someone entered our systems and corrupted them all. I grind my teeth while reading through the whole damage assessment my cyber team did. This wasn't the first time that something like this had happened. This was becoming almost routine by now. Despite all our efforts, someone always found a way around all our security checks, and this was now starting to grate on my nerves. So far we have a list of culprits who could be behind this. The list consisted of 3 names. I would hunt them all down at any cost and make them regret their whole life. I'd ensure they died the slowest deaths, begging and crying for the quickest way out, but they wouldn't have it. No one ever crossed me and got away with it. I always hunted them down and gave them the most torturous death, so they wouldn't dare to be born again. Before I could drive my fist through the screen, my phone rang up. I scowled and picked it up. Cross Jeremy off the list. Caspian, my brother, spoke first. I cocked an eyebrow and leaned back in my chair. You killed him? I asked, intrigued. Jeremy was one of our 3 main suspects. Nah, he killed himself, Caspian responded, a tone of amusement in his voice. I clenched my teeth. In times like these I wouldn't say I liked humor a lot. But before he took himself out, he tipped us, really. I asked, who is it then? Florence. It was another one of our suspects. In response, Caspian chuckled. Florence is dead too. Someone else took him out, Caspian spoke, his voice dark and cynical. At this point you can guess correctly who it could be. Morgan, I breathed. It was a hacker no one had ever seen. No one knew who Morgan was, where he or she lived, what was their real name, and most importantly why they were targeting us. But I knew one thing, it was Morgan all along. Jeremy and Florence were notorious hackers, but they didn't have it in them to play such pranks on us. Deep down I had known subconsciously that it was Morgan, but I had sent my brother after Jeremy and Florence just to be sure. That fucker, Caspian muttered. Have you found something about him? I asked. Nothing, but we can be sure now that it had been him all along, Caspian confirmed, and I agreed. Whoever this Morgan was, they were good at what they did, so good that even my cyber team, who were supposed to be the best in the country, couldn't find Morgan. Despite my frustration and anger at him for continuously attacking us, I was impressed at Morgan's skill. They seemed to know what they were doing, and they did it well. If they weren't against us, I'd have paid them millions to work for us. This made me more curious about Morgan, and even more restless to find him. They had proven that their skills were the best in the country, and if we failed to find them in time, they could bring us down single-handedly. I wasn't going to allow that. And what did Jeremy tip you exactly? I asked. Jeremy had been trying to find out about Morgan for years, and so far, he told me that Morgan is a girl and she's from somewhere around the south coast. A girl, I gritted. A she-wolf, Caspian mused, making the fire burn harder in my chest. I was now more determined than ever to hunt her down. I wasn't going to let a she-wolf destroy us. And once she had been caught, I'd make sure she regretted messing with us. What else? I probed just to be sure. Nothing much. I'll be back by evening after I finish the business here properly, Caspian told me, and in the background I could hear a few of our men talking and breaking things. They must be tearing Jeremy's home apart to find other important things. Come back ASAP. I'll find this she-wolf soon, I declared, making Caspian chuckle. Promise me you'll share her with me. I'd like to have a piece of her too. After all, she had kept us on our toes for a while, Caspian chuckled. I knew what he really meant by that. I didn't know why, but I was more interested in hunting down Morgan. Morgan would wish she were dead, I growled. She must have nerves of steel to mess with us, Caspian commented after barking a few orders at one of the men in the background. To mess with the two of us, and not once, but numerous times, and doing this for years without us ever being able to find out anything about her. He spoke what I had been thinking about all this time. You've got to give it to her for that. We have to find her soon, I stated before he could go on about her. Because Jeremy and Florence are out. This might have alerted her, I know. I'm tearing down everything in Jeremy's house to see what else he found out about her, Caspian told me. Gotta go now. See you tonight, brother. With that, he disconnected the call. Immediately, I messaged my team and told them everything Caspian said to me about Morgan. In the meantime, I could only wait for them to continue their investigation and for Caspian to return. And this was the part which I hated the most, waiting. I was the most patient man, but lately my wolf had been acting strange. I sighed deeply and checked the time. It was about to be 5 in the morning. I hadn't slept all night because my wolf had been quite active inside me, not letting me sleep. It was as if he was trying to tell me something, but whenever I'd try to talk to him, he'd shut me down. This had never happened before. I had always been in sync with my wolf. Something was making it act strange and I didn't know what it could be. Maybe I should visit the old witch who lived in the woods. She knew everything, one of the reasons why we never fucked with her, and let her stay in our territory even though she wasn't a member of our pack. She'd throw us a bone once in a while, and that was all that constituted our symbiotic relationship. I got up and decided to try to take a nap, even though I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. I left the office and went to the house I shared with my brother. I went to my bathroom and stripped before taking a cold shower. I sucked in a sharp breath as the cold water hit my body, pricking my skin like 1,000 needles. The discomfort eased out in a couple of seconds, and my muscles relaxed while I felt the water run down my body. We're coming for you, Morgan. For Caspian, it took us a while to get out of Jeremy's house. We found a lot of hard drives that seemed to be full of data. It'd be given to Blake, our head of the cyber team, to see if we could find anything else about Morgan. I found some notes made by Jeremy about some of Morgan's previous work. I had ensured to take them as well. It was dark when we finally managed to leave. It took us a whole day just to do this work, and I was feeling agitated because I had other plans for today as well, but I couldn't take care of them because of raiding Jeremy's house. Despite all of this, we were one step ahead. We now knew Morgan was a she-wolf, and she lived somewhere on the southern coast. Interesting. Very interesting. Of all the people, it happened to be a she-wolf. Who could have ever thought about that? But it kind of complicated things for a bit. Usually we knew all our enemies and most of them happened to be men. There were a couple of she-wolves on the list too, but I could imagine none of them to be Morgan. They didn't have the nerve to do what Morgan did. It made me more curious about her, and I could tell that my brother had the same feelings about this whole Morgan ordeal. It had been years since she had been messing with us. Last year she had stolen 10 million from us, and Marius had been mad since then. This was when things turned severe for us. It was one thing to mess with us and another thing to steal so much money. I had been on the ground since then, trying to find Morgan myself. Previously I had a separate team looking at Morgan, but I decided to take things into my own hands after it got that serious. Finally, we seemed to have some clue, filling me with a strange excitement. Morgan had been a big mystery we were trying to solve, and finally we seemed to have a clue. We could eventually move in a direction where we could finally get to her and stop her from ruining us. Whoever she was, we couldn't deny that she was very powerful, and had the absolute potential to bring us down. This couldn't be allowed. When I stepped out of Jeremy's house, a cold breeze brushed my hair, soothing me for a bit. I stood on his driveway for a second and breathed in the fresh night air. Immediately it made my wolf stir. It had been a long time since I had taken a proper run, and tonight, something was in the air calling me to transform into my wolf and run free through the woods, tasting freedom. Freedom from what? Well, I had been feeling pretty odd lately. It was hard to describe, but it unsettled me at night. So much so that I wasn't able to fall asleep. I'd often spend my time in the training room, training until all my muscles hurt, and I'd pass out of exhaustion. Still, it wouldn't go away. That unsettled feeling would be the same thing to make my mind wander in the day when I needed to focus on my work. It felt like a part of me was slowly fading away into darkness. It felt like I was losing touch with a piece of me, and it deeply scared me. Why was this happening to me? Was this some sickness of the wolf? I wondered about it as I stood there, enjoying the night breeze. The run to our pack from Jeremy's house would be far away, but I wanted to let it out. Maybe this would finally calm me down and I could think straight again. I decided to go for a run. I informed one of my men and went to Jeremy's backyard, where the woods could be easily accessed. I carefully stripped and changed into my wolf before taking my clothes into my mouth and running. I ran through the dark woods, letting the chilly night air brush through my furs. It felt so fucking amazing, and for once it made me feel free of all the worries in life. But despite all that, the unsettled feeling remained. Just wouldn't go away. Instead of letting it ruin my run, I enjoyed the night and the woods. I kept running without taking a break. My wolf was fully energized because it hadn't been out for a while, so he was pleased to be out, and despite running for miles, he didn't seem to have gotten the least bit tired. I entered the pack territories just in time and stopped only when I was at the doorstep of the house I shared with my brother. I transformed into myself and walked in with my clothes in my hand, stark naked. It didn't matter. Nudeness wasn't an issue in our pack. Everyone had seen everyone's packages. I found Marius in the living room with his laptop when I entered the building. He looked up as soon as he sensed me. "You went on a run?" he asked, a hint of annoyance in his voice. "I guess I was late. I ran here." "Yes," I nodded, running my hands through my hair, that unsettling feeling creeping back into me. But this time it was even more intense. The harder I tried to push it back every time, the worse it seemed to get. Matt seemed to have read my expression because he asked, "What is it?" "Nothing," I dismissed and went upstairs to shower quickly. When I returned downstairs, the dinner was served, and Matt was waiting for me at the dining table under the grand chandelier. I grunted at the dinner choices but decided just to shut up and eat. "You know I'm supposed to be the grumpy one," Matt commented. I frowned. "I'm just tired," I said, filling my plate with ribs. Silence fell between us as we continued to eat. I felt Matt's eyes on me, waiting. He had noticed it, and there was no hiding anything from him. He was a keen observer, sometimes too keen for my liking. I started trying to collect the right words to describe that unsettling feeling properly, because I knew Matt wouldn't give up until I told him what was bothering me. "I've been feeling restless for quite a while. My wolf is acting strange. It's like he has gotten a mind of his own all of a sudden and doesn't want to listen to me at all." As soon as I said that, Matt's eyes widened. "You've been feeling that too." 5. Lyra. I lingered in the shadows for a while, waiting. In the distance, the sound of the sea crashing against the rocks filled the silence, along with the natural sounds of the woods. The woods were thicker and harder to reach here, one of the reasons why this was the perfect place for me to meet people. I naturally claimed this territory to be mine. I straightened up, alert, when I heard some noise in the distance. My wolf was on alert too. I listened intently to her and the noise to see who it could be. I didn't step out of the shadows of the trees until a familiar figure stepped out into the clearing and headed towards the cliff's edge. But even then I took my time to watch him. I couldn't understand why, but something had been bothering me lately, making it harder to lean into my natural intuition. When I didn't step out immediately, the figure scanned the woods, missing me easily. I smiled to myself. It was Nat, one of the most skilled killers, yet he missed me even when I was partially visible. I guess my several hours of camouflaging practice were paying off well. "I'm here," Nat announced when I didn't step out yet. I pondered for a couple of seconds, wondering how it'd go if I teased him. That would be comical, but my shoulders dropped immediately because that wouldn't be possible today. I had somewhere else to be after this meeting. Maybe next time. Casually, I stepped out of cover, my hands in my pockets, my mask and the voice modulator on and my eyes set on the man. I noticed how his body visibly stiffened to see me. I couldn't help but smile to myself. He feared me, and for some reason it pleased me deeply. It made me yearn to see the fear in his eyes as I stepped before him. "You're late," I told him and saw him gulp hard visibly. It made me smile wider under the mask. "I got stuck at an errand," he clarified quickly. "Your task has been carried out flawlessly. The payment has to be done by tonight," he pushed, tilting his head to a side and giving me a challenging look even though the tension in his body grew severe. I chuckled. "Show me first," I demanded, stepping closer and seeing him getting tenser. He gave out a breath before pulling an envelope out of his coat. I snatched it from him and tore it before looking at the pictures of a man shot in the head. "What do you think?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. I glanced at him. $10,000 deducted, I spat. It'd have been perfect had the shot been in the middle of his eyebrows. "Come on. You wanted him dead, and he's dead," he protested, angrily throwing his hands in the air. I gave him a stern look, and he straightened up quickly. He couldn't see my eyes, but he could feel the wrath in my gaze under the mask. $20,000 deducted, what? Total $30,000. Wait, no, he cut. All right. I get it. I will keep that in mind from next time. I nodded, took the lighter from my pocket, and burned the pictures. "I have some news." He tried to tempt me before I could leave. I tilted my head and glanced at him, my hand on the gun just in case he was wasting my time. "But I'd need those $30,000 if you wished to hear it," he told me. "What about you tell me the news and then I kill you?" I asked, and he straightened up quickly. "This is going to get you killed someday," I heard him mutter under his breath. I pondered if I should show him my new gun, but he spoke up before that. "But I'll throw you a bone today. Florence is dead, that's old news, and so is Jeremy," he added quickly, making me freeze. He smirked at me, knowing that this was the first time he caught me off guard. I clenched my fist as he continued, "And you could guess who took him down, the King brothers. Those two bastards." Not that I was sad at Jeremy's death. No. I was glad he was dead because he had been trying to keep tabs on me. With him gone, I had one less thing to worry about, but if anything, his death was more of an indirect message by those bastard brothers. They're out there, looking for me. I knew I was next after Jeremy. I should have been scared, but it made me laugh out loud, puzzling Nat. He watched me with shock. "You shouldn't be laughing, really," he commented, his expression hardening. "They're coming for you, Morgan. If I were you, I'd wish the earth swallowed me whole before the brothers could reach me." "That's the thing, Nat," I laughed. He was trying to warn me, but if anything, his words made me laugh. "You're not me. You'll never be me. I have my ways, and it's okay if you don't understand them. Just stay in your lane and do as you're told to do," I told him. He shook his head at me. "You should fear them, Morgan," he told me. "They're not like Simone. They're much more dangerous, and they can go to any extent to hunt you down. And why are you so concerned about me?" I laughed instead of getting serious like he wanted me to be, but fuck that. I didn't fear anymore. Not even those bastard brothers. They'd never get to me. Ever. "You pay me well. I would hate to get that cut. Besides, they're the Alpha brothers. Everyone fears them. You should too." "I'm not everyone, Nat. I appreciate your concerns, but it's clear you undermine me." "A lot," I told him. "I think it's time for me to find a new hitman," I announced, and he shook his head again. I could tell that he wanted to say more, but I left before that. I had more important shit to deal with than those bastards. 6. Lyra. After meeting Nat, I went back to my place and showered. It was a fairly sunny day, and even though I had too much on my plate to deal with, I decided to take a break today. I hadn't had a break in a while. For once, I wanted to pretend to be a normal girl, spending some time by myself along the beach, soaking up the sun before the winter could arrive. This summer has been quite busy for me. I hadn't had the opportunity to take myself out much and enjoy myself. I should have taken myself out more, otherwise how was I going to meet my mate? The moon goddess promised me that she'd fulfill all my desires, but there was something unsettling about the whole thing. I couldn't figure it out yet, but there seemed to be a catch I must have missed. As much as I was excited to meet my mate, I was somewhat anxious. What if he turned out to be nothing like I had imagined? I'd be devastated, but for the time being I was trying to be positive about the whole thing. That was the only option I was left, or I could just worry myself sick, but fuck that. After my second lover left me, I already wasted a year mourning the abrupt end of our relationship. Now I was choosing to move forward and be more optimistic and hoping that things would work out. This was one of the reasons why I felt like taking today off. I wanted to have a moment for myself and enjoy the last sunny days of summer. Even though I was the kind of person to always keep myself busy, I decided to postpone all the work for tomorrow. The world could wait. I put on some light makeup and slathered sunscreen before getting dressed for the beach. I took my surfing board and drove down to the beach that was almost 20 minutes away from my residence. I couldn't help but smile to myself as I parked my car and went down to the beach with my surfing board and my tote bag. Today the beach wasn't crowded, making it even better for me. I chose a quiet spot for me and put my towel down before laying in the sun for a while. It was the perfect sunny day, not too sunny, and at the same time a gentle cool breeze was flowing. This day couldn't have been more perfect. I drank some beer as I scanned the waves. I wanted to go surfing, but there weren't many waves today, but that was alright. I didn't feel like leaving my perfect spot. So I lay there and enjoyed the day, watching people and slowly drifting off. I woke up abruptly when I felt a shadow hovering over me. I opened my eyes to find a pair of gray eyes intently staring at me. Hey, the man smiled at me. I shot him a glare as I grabbed my tote. I wanted to be left alone, but his flirty smile gave me an idea. Are you from here? He asked. I ignored his question and studied him from head to toe. He had a great body and looked good, so I decided to give him a chance. You're new here, I remarked. He gave me another of his flirty smiles that formed a deep dimple down his left cheek. It almost reminded me of Kent Clark. He was really easy on the eyes and made it easier for me to forgive him for disturbing my small nap. I could always have a little fun while I wait to find my mate. Yes, I'm here for a couple of days. What about you? He asked me. It's a work trip, I noted, ignoring his question again. He shuffled on his feet, slightly impatient due to his questions being ignored. Where are you from? I asked. North, he shrugged, focusing his eyes intently on my body. Are you a local? He asked. Yes, I finally decided to answer. Wanna go around the town? I offered. Well, I could cancel my whole weekend. I really need a break, and I think I could have some more fun if his skill set matched his looks. That's what I was talking about. The man gave me another of his suggestive smiles. I'm Fidel. He offered his hand to me. I gave it a look and took it, getting up from my spot. I knew that he was a complete stranger and could mean danger, but fuck that. I needed to live a little bit more. I could always take care of things if they went south. Besides, strangers were the best kind to have fun with. However, I made a mental note to get all the info on him when I returned home tonight. I'm Lyra, I told him. You're so beautiful, Lyra, he told me, his eyes running over my body heatedly. I laughed. Thanks, I get that a lot. Now what would you like to do? I asked, testing. He shrugged. I'm down for anything, he told me. Time limits. I have a meeting at 7 tonight, he told me. I tilted my head and gave him another look. Who do you work for? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Suddenly, the flirtatious mask he had been wearing slipped off his face. Something dark flickered in his eyes before his smile was back. Why don't we get going, sweetheart? I want to make every minute count with you, he told me instead, stepping closer and gently running the back of his knuckles against my jaw. I laughed. I cannot wait to see what you have in store for me, Fidel, I whispered, running my hand down his six-packs. I felt him suck in a sharp breath, making my smile grow wider. So far so good. Let's go then. He almost growled his words before grabbing my things and leading me out of the beach. 7. Marius, why the fuck is Fidel so late? I growled. Rory shrugged, texting away at his phone, probably asking others about Fidel. And where is my brother? I growled, waiting. He's out too, Rory answered. Jack says Fidel's on his way. He was out with a girl the whole afternoon. Did he think this trip was to have fun with beach girls? We are here to find Morgan, I growled. Rory sighed heavily. He replied. He's on his way here. I'm going to fuck him up if he doesn't have any info on Morgan, I growled. Fidel was my right-hand man and I usually gave him some slack, but lately he had been testing my nerves. Maybe I should go down heavy on him this time to remind him who he worked for. I wouldn't say I liked how he was getting too comfortable working for me. And where the fuck is Caspian? I asked, cracking my knuckles. I was doing most of the work here, while others were treating this trip as a vacation. This was another thing testing my nerves. We needed to find Morgan fast before she could figure out that we were not only after her but we had managed to find her city. Nothing from him yet, but Fidel's going to be here in 10, Rory updated me. I'm going to break his ass, I growled, and Rory pursed his lips, suppressing his laughter. That was it. I would give everyone hell tonight because no one seemed to be taking me seriously lately. Rory must have sensed the shift in my energy because he straightened up quickly and hung his head low in submission. Just in time, I heard a knock on my hotel room suite. Come in, I growled, knowing well enough who it could be. Fidel strolled in, a look of glee on his face. Evening, boss. I punched his face before he could finish and he collapsed. Suddenly I was craving blood. I was usually good with controlling my emotions, but ever since my wolf had started to act strange, I had multiple accounts where I lost control completely. But this was excessive. I should have stopped at the punch, but the bloodthirst was unexplainable. I didn't know why, but suddenly I wanted to tear Fidel apart, limb by limb, and hear him scream in pain. At that moment it felt like that would give me immense satisfaction, and some relief from the chaos brewing inside me for days now. Marius, Rory stepped in between before I could cause more harm to Fidel. Meanwhile, that motherfucker got up and lowered his head in submission. I could see one of his eyes slowly turning purple. Are you alright? Rory asked me cautiously. Where is my brother? I roared, making the walls shiver. I'm trying to get to him, but Fidel, tell us, what have you gathered till now? Rory urged while I tried to calm my nerves. This hadn't happened before. Why was I seeing red all of a sudden? Was I going mad? No. Why would that be? I tried to think of other reasons, but I couldn't come up with any. The only thing that seemed reasonable at that moment was that I was starting to lose not only my wolf but also my sanity. This would be the worst case, but why? Why me? Why all of a sudden? I couldn't find any answers, which made it worse for me. I've talked to a couple of vigilantes. They say Morgan is most definitely a she-wolf. She doesn't belong to any pack here, he informed. What else? I demanded, finding it hard to calm down. I've gone through the rogues list and the lone wolves that live here. Still, I didn't find any women that could be Morgan. Only 2 women live apart from the pack. Both are lone wolves, and they seem to be too old and disconnected from the world to be Morgan. What else? I growled, getting more and more impatient with every passing second. Whatever Fidel was telling me was too vague to make out anything. Fidel shuffled on his feet and exchanged a look with Rory. This is all I have found till now. I was out with this girl today. She's a local and seemed to be from one of the packs from here. She knows some stuff because she's the one who told me all this, he informed me, but still it wasn't enough to satisfy me. This wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Then bring her to me. I will see how much she knows, I growled, and Fidel straightened up. Okay. I'm not sure if she'd be up with this, he told me hesitantly, shuffling on his feet. She's kinda hard to get. He spoke with a tone that made me want to punch him again. I didn't know why I was feeling this. Maybe a run would fix all of this. It had been a while since I had gone for a run, and perhaps it would also help my wolf. Caspian had been having somewhat of the same problem lately, and he said letting his wolf out for a while and going on a run helped him a bit. But at the same time, I didn't want to waste any time here. I wanted to locate Morgan before she could know that we were here. However, I wouldn't be surprised if she already knew about our presence here. She was very skilled, and after Jeremy's death, I could bet she was looking out for us. She knew she was next, making it more critical for us to make our next move as soon as possible. Then do whatever you need to do to bring her to us. I don't care. If that girl knows anything, then I want her. Do you understand me? I growled. Yes, Alpha. I'll bring her to you tomorrow, Fidel promised grimly. I could finally see him getting back into work mode, which made it one less thing to worry about. For now, I needed to find Caspian and see how I could stop my wolf from making me lose control again. 8. Lyra, I laughed, staring at the scene. A familiar pair of gray eyes with a Kent Clark face stared back. Under his picture, all the information on him was listed. Name Fidel Blackstone. Date of birth January 12, 1991. Place of origin Green Bay. Member of the Nightfall Pack. Rank second in command to Marius King. The last line made me laugh harder. It seemed like I had spent the whole day flirting with no one other than the right-hand man of my enemy. It couldn't get more satirical than this, but sometimes I liked life's sense of humor. I scrolled through the rest of the data about him, which included everything about him. The more I read, the more I laughed. They thought they were going to find me before I could know that they were here, but one of their men gave it all away. My stomach was starting to ache from laughing harder. I knew something felt off about him when he kept asking about the packs here and trying to learn more about the wolves. Also, the fact that he was from the north. It worked out for me to go out with him and feed him somewhat useless information. Now, I knew what he was here for, and even though this should have set my guard high, I was looking forward to seeing him again tomorrow. I wasn't going to let this opportunity go to waste. I wanted to keep feeding him the wrong info and see what they did with that. Things just got more interesting. I closed Fidel's files and looked at the other data I found on the Alpha brothers. I hacked into the airport server and knew when they had landed in the city, and even managed to find which hotel they were staying at. From the looks of it, the trip seemed to have been abruptly planned right after Jeremy's death. However, this made it clear that they were looking for me. And this time they were serious. This should have scared me. This could have scared anyone else but not me. Instead, it oddly excited me. My mind was already filled with all the ideas of all the ways I could mess with them. That'd be a lot of fun. I knew that they must have found out about the city from Jeremy since he had been on my tail for a while, but yet hadn't managed to find out about me as much. This was good. Here I was almost getting bored of life, but now I had something to look forward to, and that was to mess with the brothers. I checked more details to see how long they planned to stay here and what they were doing. I had hacked into that hotel's security base several times, so it was easy for me this time as well. It was one of the posh hotels in the city, seemingly very guarded, and often high-profile people stayed there. These factors made it my favorite place to hack into and access the cameras to see what was happening there. I checked the details to see on which floor and room they were staying. This couldn't have been easier for me. I checked the footage and found one of the brothers walking down the hallway. I zoomed into the footage to figure out which one of the brothers was it. It turned out to be Marius, the eldest. I couldn't make out much in the grimy security video, but he looked tense. I didn't know why, but as soon as I saw him on the screen, something shifted inside me. I watched him walking towards a lift. There was just something about the way he moved that made me focus more on him. I knew what the brothers looked like. I had seen their pictures several times here and there, but this was the first time I saw a video of one of them. There was no doubt that he was a powerful wolf. There was no denying that by the way he moved. There was this aura about him that could be felt through the screen. Again, this should have set off all my alarms, but instead of that, it fueled my thirst to mess with them. I wanted to mess them up pretty badly. I watched Marius get on the lift and go down 2 floors before disappearing into a room. I groaned, wishing there were cameras in the room too. I could hack their phones. I did it several times in the past, but for the sake of maintaining the thrill for me, I decided against it. After all, where would be the fun if I already knew all the cards my enemies had been dealt with? I was merely choosing to play fair with the brothers. For now. As long as I could have as much fun with them as possible. I'd get rid of them as soon as this was all over. It was as simple as that. But the idea of getting rid of them almost made me sad. If I permanently got rid of them, there wouldn't be any fun left for me. I pouted. Now this was a great dilemma, but for the time being I would focus on having fun. I could always figure out something on the way. I watched the camera footage for a while and saw the other brother, Caspian, enter the hotel. Again, something stirred inside me as I stared at him on the screen. I couldn't figure out what it was about the brothers that provoked something profound and primitive inside my being. Maybe it was merely my wolf's reaction to seeing a strong wolf. Even though I didn't belong to any pack, my wolf was somewhat receptive to the pack hierarchy. Not that she liked to be part of it. It was the opposite. The two of us hated having any authority over us. I'd die than have an alpha make decisions about my life. I liked to be free and independent. It was one of the reasons why I avoided pack life like a plague. The pack life always made a person subservient and minimized their potential to fit in a useless hierarchy that'd eventually crumble one day. I could either wait for that to happen or I could make it happen. Of course I chose the latter. 9. Lyra. The next day I met Fidel at the agreed spot. I couldn't help but smile wider at him. He gave me a flirtatious smile, his eyes lustfully skimming all over my body. There was a glint of hope of getting laid in his eyes, but little did he know about the terror I was planning for him. "What do you plan to do today?" I asked, giving him a flirtatious look. We were at a small cafe near the coast. The beautiful blue sea was visible from there, making the ambience of this place just perfect. We could go diving today. The weather's great too, I offered, testing how he'd respond. I have something in my mind, he offered, downing his beer. I planned it last night with a buddy. I couldn't help but laugh at that. I could easily guess who his buddy was, but I wouldn't let him, of course. Oh really? I acted to be surprised and intrigued. Yes, you might not have heard of it, he teased. I laughed at his face. I knew this city like the back of my hand. He didn't know whom he was talking to. Then pray tell me about it. Where is it? I asked. It's a private club. My buddy is a member. He's throwing a party tonight. I want you to come with me, he told me. I cocked an eyebrow at him. Sure, I looked like an unsuspecting girl, but I was far from that. I had dug enough on him to know what he was thinking about. I knew why he wanted to take me to that private party, and what he wanted to get out of me. It was either more free information for him or he hoped to get laid. The latter was never going to happen. I had standards after all. Sure, I'd have considered it if he weren't working for the brother. Oh, that sounds cool. Where is the place though? I asked, pinning him with my eyes. It's at the Pearl Hotel. I'm staying there, of course you are. I smiled innocently to stroke his ego. But tell me, what is this party all about? Will you be introducing me to your friends? I asked playfully, twirling my hair and giving him a suggestive look. He stared at me for a second longer, pondering in his head. I could almost see the wheels spinning behind his ears. He was wondering if he wanted me to keep to himself. He didn't want any competition. Even though I wasn't active in the dating marketplace after getting my heart broken, I knew that I was quite the catch. At least at first glance, and he wanted to keep the score to himself. But this gave me more ideas. What if he took me to the party, and I happened to meet one of the brothers? I could easily catch their eyes and do whatever I wished to do. The idea almost made me want to giggle out loud. The wheels in my head were turning as well. Of course, meeting the brothers directly could be risky. Even if I weren't the hacker they were hunting for, hanging out with the brothers was never a good idea. They were dangerous, mateless, and probably crazy. I was sure about this. One had to be a certain level of crazy to stay on the top and maintain fear among everyone. It was one thing to play with them harmlessly and another thing to take the whole business to the sheets. That would be too much of a commitment for reckless maniacs like them. Even if those two were the last men alive on this planet and I was in heat, I'd choose to die than fuck them. It's a small celebration for a huge deal we closed yesterday night. Sure, my friends would be there, he answered after a few seconds. He tilted his head to the side, studying me. I gave him a disarming smile. That sounds wonderful. I cannot wait to meet others, I told him suggestively, and instantly, something dark flickered in his eyes. I saw a hint of possessiveness. Not the kind that'd have flattered me. No. It was the kind of reckless possessiveness that kids had with their toys. I'll see about that, he told me darkly, his nostrils flaring. What's wrong, Fidel? I asked, reaching across the table and brushing my fingertips on his arm. I didn't miss how he sucked in a sharp breath. I knew the effect that I had on him. He put his beer down and was about to hold my hand, but I pulled back just in time and gave him an innocent smile. I'll pick you up at 6, he told me. Dress your best. I cannot wait to see your reaction to see in my little black dress, I told him suggestively, and immediately, his eyes darkened. His breath shallowed, and I could imagine him pitching a tent in his pants. I giggled evilly. I will look forward to seeing you, he spoke as I gathered my things and got up. See you, Fidel. I blew him a kiss before walking out of the cafe. It was around 10 in the morning. I had a few hours in my hand to prepare for tonight. I didn't know why, but suddenly I was too excited to go to the party. Especially my wolf. She had started pacing frantically, scattering my thoughts for the moment. I decided to go home and do some more digging. It was always a good idea to be well prepared if you were planning to go into your enemy's den. I didn't want to mess up the opportunity. This could be the first time I might meet one of the brothers. I needed to make an excellent first impression on my enemies, even though they didn't know about me yet. I wondered if I should leave some hints for them. That'd be fun. Marius. I glared at my watch, irked at Fidel for not arriving at the private party soon. My brother Caspian was out again, and his absence considerably worsened my mood. Since yesterday it had been getting harder and harder for me to keep in control, especially after I snapped at Fidel and attacked him. That had never happened before. I had never lost my control in that manner. Sure, I had bashed Fidel in the past more than a dozen times because he fucked up something important, but that had always been deliberate on my part. In all those situations, I was always in control. I always knew what I was doing. But last night's event had planted some worry in my mind. It was true that I hadn't been in my right mind for a while now, especially with my wolf pacing inside me and keeping me awake at night. I couldn't help but watch the people around me in disdain. They were enjoying it tonight, but me. I was miserable. Partying wasn't my thing. Caspian was more into such things, but me. I loved working hard, kicking ass, and always ensuring I was 10 steps ahead of everyone. That was where I derived most of my fun. And while I tried to remind myself that this was all a work thing, especially this party, I still felt irked by everything around me. Tonight, I drank more than I usually did at parties. That was the only thing helping me calm my senses to some extent so I could sit there without trying to kill anyone. I kept looking for Fidel again and again, wondering where the fuck he was. Was he fucking the girl he was supposed to bring tonight? If so, then I'd need to give him more shit for wasting my time. Instead of sitting there and waiting, I could have productively used my time to go out and do some independent investigation because, given how my men were treating this as a vacation, I knew I had to be the serious one to get things done. I was already considering leaving the party and meeting some local contacts when I was informed of Fidel's arrival. Immediately, my wolf was alert and pacing as if something important was supposed to happen, which worsened my mood. My wolf needed to be the last thing to trouble me in that situation, but I guess I could never catch a break. I left the private booth where I had been sulking most of the evening. I had been drinking alone while watching people through the one-way glass. Although it was a good vantage point for observing people, I felt the need to step out and take matters into my own hands. He's getting her loosened up. Give him a couple of minutes, Rory told me, nodding towards the main bar. I was tempted to return to my private booth, but I went to the bar instead and ordered a strong drink. Even though I had been drinking for most of the evening, I was still annoyingly sober. I might as well have been drinking water all this time because my wolf's sudden overactiveness was making it harder for me to get drunk. As soon as I sat at the bar, I looked around for Fidel. I didn't have to search for long. I found him instantly, occupying a table in a less crowded corner of the room. But it wasn't Fidel who caught my attention. No, it was the woman with him. As soon as I saw her, all my senses amplified. It felt like I was slowly stirring awake from an eternal slumber, like I was surfacing after being underwater for my whole life, like all my senses had suddenly unlocked all the new sensations. I watched the woman from afar, laughing with Fidel. I was too far from the table for her to notice me, but I couldn't find the strength or willpower to look away after seeing her. She was breathtaking, life-altering, and wolf-stirring. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest irrationally as I stared at her. The more I looked at her, the more I became perpetually aware of the emptiness inside me that had lingered under the surface for years. Yet I had always ignored it. She made me feel like I had been a corpse all this time, but the sight of her had just breathed a new form of life force inside me. But I didn't like that she was with Fidel. No, she should have been with me. Her whole attention should have been on me. She should have been with me. She was mine. That was decided in that instant. My chest vibrated with a growl as my wolf agreed with me. She was ours. She was my mate. I have finally found the woman I wanted to mate, mark, knot, and breed. She was meant for me. I straightened up and headed for Fidel's place without much thought. I needed to be by her side, to talk to her, to know her name, to know everything about her, and having any space between us already felt like torture. I felt drawn to her, like an invisible rope pulling me toward her. My legs moved faster. She straightened and snapped her head toward me when I was close enough for her to feel my presence. By then I was already at their table. Her beautiful doe eyes widened as soon as she saw me. When our eyes locked, I felt all the tension and annoyance drain out of my body until the only thing left was the aching need for her. I didn't know I had been craving her until I saw her. I heard the chair scraping and footsteps hurrying away, but I couldn't care less. At that moment, all that mattered to me was her. "Hello, mate," I greeted. "Want to know what happens next? Subscribe to get updates first."